The screen door slapped shut behind Claire, and the smell of her mother's pot roast hit her before she even reached the kitchen. It was the same smell that had greeted her every Sunday of her childhood, and for half a second she was 12 again, walking into a room where her sister already occupied the best chair and the largest portion of everything. She set the bottle of wine on the counter and kissed Eleanor's cheek. "Smells amazing, Mom. Your father grilled the bread," Eleanor said, not looking up from the carrots. "Meredith's bringing dessert. And Daniel." She said the name like it was a question. "Daniel," Claire repeated. She'd heard about him. 2 months. According to Meredith's Instagram. Some kind of salesman, tall from the photos. Eleanor finally glanced over. "You remember to wear something nice, sweetheart?" Claire looked down at her dark jeans and sweater. "This is nice." Her mother's mouth tightened, but she didn't push it. She never pushed Claire. Not the way she pushed Meredith. Robert was in the living room, watching a golf tournament with the sound low. He raised a hand in greeting. "Hey, Bug." "Hey, Dad." Claire sat on the arm of the chair. "How's the knee?" "Same. Doctor says I'm old." He smiled. A brief flicker, then his eyes went back to the screen. The doorbell rang at 6:15, and Eleanor was on her feet before the sound finished. Meredith swept in first. Cream sweater, gold earrings, hair blown out like she'd come from a salon appointment instead of a 20-minute drive. Behind her, Dan Reyes held a bakery box and wore the slightly cautious expression of a man meeting his girlfriend's family for the first time. "Mom!" Meredith wrapped Eleanor in a hug that was just slightly too tight, just slightly too long. "You look beautiful. Did you do something different with your hair?" Eleanor preened. "Just a trim." Meredith turned to Claire, and her smile shifted. Same shape. Different temperature. "Claire, you came. Live around the corner, Mare." Claire accepted the air kiss. Hard to avoid. Dan set the box on the counter and extended a hand. "Dan, nice to finally meet you." "Claire." His grip was firm, his eyes quick. He was taking in the room, the family, the dynamics. Salesman's eyes. She'd seen them before. Dinner was served at 7. Robert carved the roast. Eleanor passed the potatoes and Meredith talked. She talked about the kids' soccer schedules, about the new kitchen renovation Bradley had started before. She paused, just barely, before he'd been traveling so much. She talked about the country club fundraiser, about her book club, about a teacher at Ava's school who simply didn't understand gifted children. Claire ate and listened and said very little. This was the rhythm they'd established over 15 years. Meredith performed. Claire watched. The audience, their parents, applauded with butter rolls and second helpings. Dan ate and listened too, but Claire caught him watching her once or twice, a faint furrow between his brows, like he was trying to place something. Then Meredith set down her fork and turned to her mother. "Oh, I meant to ask, did I tell you Claire came to the school auction? She was so sweet, trying to bid on that silent auction item." Her laugh was light, fond, the way you'd laugh at a child who'd tried to help and made a mess. "Mom, don't ask her about her career. It's too embarrassing." The table went quiet. Eleanor's fork hovered. Robert looked up from his plate. Claire felt her own face go still, the way it always did when Meredith went for the throat with a smile on her face. She set down her own fork. "It's really not. No, I mean it." Meredith turned to Dan, her tone conspiratorial, like they were sharing a private joke about a beloved but hopeless relative. "Claire quit her real job years ago to do this little startup thing. You know, working from home, no benefits. I keep telling her she should come work with Bradley at the firm. At least then she'd have stability." She patted Claire's hand. "I just worry about you, that's all." Dan had stopped eating. He looked at Meredith, then at Claire, then back at Meredith. His expression had shifted. The cautiousness was gone, replaced by something Claire couldn't quite read. "Meredith," he said, slow. "What?" She smiled at him, warm and easy. "I'm just teasing. She knows I love her." Dan set down his fork. He wiped his mouth with his napkin, carefully, like he was buying time. Then he looked at Claire, and Claire saw it. Recognition. Not the vague trying to place something from earlier. Full recognition. "So," he said, and his voice was quieter now, directed at the table, but his eyes stayed on Claire. "Should I tell them who signed my paycheck this morning?" Meredith's smile didn't move, but something behind her eyes went very still. "What are you talking about?" Dan finally looked at her. "I work at Viridian Labs, Meredith. In the Atlanta office. I've been there 14 months. He paused. "Claire Bennett is the CEO. She approved my promotion last week. The paperwork went through this morning." The silence that followed was the kind that has weight. Claire could hear the clock in the hallway, the faint hum of the refrigerator, her own breathing. Meredith's face drained of color. Not a little. All of it, like someone had pulled a plug. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. You never said, you never asked where I worked." Dan's voice was gentle, but there was an edge to it. "You said you didn't want to talk shop on dates." Eleanor looked from Meredith to Claire to Dan, her expression cycling through confusion, embarrassment, and something that might have been pride, before she settled on neutral. "Claire, is that true? You're a CEO?" Claire opened her mouth to answer, but her phone buzzed in her pocket. Then again, then a third time, rapid fire, like someone was sending multiple messages. She pulled it out and glanced at the screen. It was Jenna. 3 texts, one after another. "ATL Business Chronicle just confirmed. Profile goes live Tuesday morning. They want a quote from you by end of day tomorrow. Claire, you there?" Claire looked up from the phone. Meredith was staring at her, pale and furious and terrified all at once. Dan was staring at his plate. Her parents were staring at her. The sun Sunday dinner table, the pot roast, the gold earrings, the 15 years of silence. None of it was going to hold after Tuesday. She slipped the phone back into her pocket and picked up her fork. "Pass the gravy," she said. The drive home took 12 minutes. Claire made it in 8, running 2 yellow lights and taking the turn onto her street a little too fast. Her street was the kind of Alpharetta subdivision where every house had the same brick facade and the same 2-car garage and the same carefully mulched flower beds. And she'd bought hers 3 years ago because it was the first thing that had ever been entirely hers. She was barely through the door when her phone rang. Meredith. Claire stared at it for 3 rings, then answered. "Hey, what the hell was that?" Meredith's voice was tight, controlled, the way it got when she was furious and trying not to sound like it. "You put him up to that. You put Dan up to humiliating me in front of Mom and Dad. I didn't even know he worked at my company until tonight, Mare. Like I'm supposed to believe that." A sharp laugh. "You've been waiting for this, haven't you? All these years, playing the quiet one, letting me talk, and then you spring this? What, you couldn't just tell us you were some big-shot CEO? You had to make a scene?" Claire leaned against her kitchen counter and closed her eyes. "I told you what I did. I told you I co-founded a software company. You said, and I quote, 'That's cute, Claire, but when are you going to get a real job?' I did not say that. You did. At Thanksgiving. 2 years ago, silence on the other end. Then quieter. That's not the point. The point is you embarrassed me. In front of Daniel. In front of our parents. He embarrassed you himself, Meredith. I didn't say a word. You knew. You knew who he was and you let me. I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't." Claire pinched the bridge of her nose. "Look, can we talk about this tomorrow? I'm exhausted. Don't you dare hang up on—" Claire hung up. She set the phone on the counter and stood in the dark kitchen for a minute, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. Then she poured herself a glass of wine and sat down at the table. The phone buzzed. Not Meredith. A number she didn't recognize. "Hey Claire, it's Dan Reyes. Got your number from the company directory. I owe you an apology. Can we meet for coffee tomorrow? My treat." Claire stared at the message. She thought about Meredith's face at the dinner table, the blood draining out of it like water from a tub. She thought about Dan's eyes, the recognition in them, the way he'd looked at her like he was seeing her for the first time. She typed back, "Sure, 11. The Starbucks on North Point." Then she set the phone down and drank her wine. She was halfway through the glass when the phone rang again. This time it was a number she recognized, Bradley's cell. They hadn't spoken in over a year, not since the Christmas before last when he'd had too much bourbon and told her, quietly, that Meredith was a lot to live with. Claire considered letting it go to voicemail. Then she answered, "Bradley." "Claire." "Hey." He sounded tired. "I know this is out of the blue. I heard about tonight. From Meredith. She called me screaming." "Of course she did. Look, I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me out before you say anything." He paused. "Meredith and I separated 4 months ago. I've been living in a condo in Midtown. She hasn't told your parents. She hasn't told anyone, as far as I know." Claire set her wine glass down. "What?" "4 months. I asked for a separation. It's been a long time coming, Claire." His voice was careful, measured, lawyerly even now. "There's more. I froze our joint accounts when I moved out. I didn't want to, but I had to protect myself. She's been running up credit cards. $40,000 at last count. She hasn't told anyone about that either." 40,000. Claire stood up. "Bradley, why are you telling me this?" "Because she called me tonight. After dinner. She was hysterical. She said you'd ruined everything, that you'd exposed her, and He stopped. "I think she's going to do something reckless. And I thought you should know what's actually going on, because I don't think you do." Claire sat back down. The wine glass sat on the table between her and the phone, half full, unsteady on its base. "Reckless like what?" "I don't know. That's the problem." Bradley sighed. "She's scared, Claire. And when Meredith gets scared, she doesn't call for help. She attacks." They talked for another 10 minutes. Bradley gave her the broad strokes. The separation, the debt, the fact that he'd been paying the kids' tuition directly because he didn't trust Meredith to handle the money. When she hung up, Claire sat in the dark for a long time, turning it over. $40,000. A separation no one knew about. Meredith scared. She'd spent 15 years thinking her sister was winning. It turned out Meredith had been performing a win for an audience that didn't even exist anymore. The next morning, Claire was at her desk by 8. Viridian Labs occupied the top 2 floors of a glass office building near the perimeter, and from her corner office she could see the skyline of Atlanta on clear days. Today was overcast, the sky the color of aluminum. Jenna appeared in her doorway at 9:30, holding 2 coffees and wearing the expression that meant trouble. "Hey, we need to talk." Claire accepted the coffee. "What's wrong?" "Nothing wrong, exactly." Jenna sat down across from her. "But I was at that tech bridge mixer last night. You know, the one at the Georgian Terrace. And I ran into Marcus Webb from Chainlogix. He mentioned that a woman named Meredith Cole had been asking him about us. About Viridian. Wanted to know our burn rate, our client retention, whether we were actually profitable or just venture capital theater." Claire's hand tightened around her coffee cup. "She said her name was Meredith Cole. Marcus said she introduced herself as a family friend of the CEO who was looking out for Claire's best interests." Jenna's brow furrowed. Claire, who is this woman? Claire closed her eyes. She's my sister. Jenna stared at her. Your sister? The one you've never mentioned. The one who... She's my sister, Claire said. And I think she's in trouble. Dan was already at Starbucks when Claire arrived, sitting at a corner table with his laptop closed and a cup of black coffee going cold in front of him. He stood up when he saw her, and there was something in his posture. Not guilt, exactly, but the awareness of having walked into a room he hadn't known was mind. Claire, thanks for coming. She sat down. You want to start from the beginning? He did. 2 months ago, a mutual friend from his gym had set him up with Meredith. She was funny, sharp, gorgeous. She talked about her kids, her house, her traveling husband, and Dan, who'd been single for a year and a half, hadn't pressed. He'd liked her. He'd really liked her. 3 weeks ago, he said, I was looking at the company org chart. They put it in the onboarding portal for the new hires, and I was helping a rep find someone, and I saw your name, Claire Bennett, CEO. I put it together. Meredith Bennett Cole. Your maiden name is Bennett, and you didn't say anything. Dan looked down at his coffee. I was up for promotion, the regional VP position. I knew you had to sign off on it. If I told Meredith I worked for her sister, she would have made it weird. She would have wanted me to put in a good word, or she would have been insulted that I hadn't told her, or I don't know. I froze. I told myself I'd say something after the promotion went through, which was this morning. He met her eyes. Claire, I had no idea she was going to say what she said at dinner. If I'd known, you couldn't have known, Claire said. She meant it. Meredith's attacks were improvisational, jazz solos of cruelty, and no one ever saw them coming until they were already in the middle of one. They talked for another 20 minutes. Dan asked if his job was in jeopardy. Claire told him it wasn't. His personnel file was clean, his numbers were good, and what he did on his own time was his business. She asked if he knew about the separation. He did. Meredith had told him 2 weeks in, crying in her car after a date, and Dan had held her hand and told her she was brave. She didn't mention the debt, he said. She made it sound like Bradley left her. Like he just walked out one day. Claire nodded. Of course she had. She left Starbucks with a headache and a decision already forming. She called Jenna from the parking lot. The Chronicle profile. It's still on for Tuesday? As far as I know, why? I want to add a quote. My quote. I want to talk about why I started the company, and why I stayed quiet about it for so long. Jenna was quiet for a beat. You sure? Once this goes out, there's no putting it back. I'm sure. She drove to her parents' house after lunch. Eleanor was in the garden, pulling weeds from the rose bushes, and Robert was in his workshop, refinishing a dresser. Claire found them both and sat them down at the kitchen table, the same table where she'd sat through 100 Sunday dinners, and she told them. She told them about Viridian Labs, about the first 3 years, when she'd lived on savings and ramen and the stubborn belief that Jenna's algorithm was worth something, about the first client, a logistics company in Savannah that had taken a chance on 2 women in a shared WeWork, about the A round, the B round, the $25 million that had hit the bank account 2 months ago and still felt like someone else's money. Eleanor listened with her hands folded in her lap. When Claire finished, she said, Why didn't you tell us? I did tell you. I told you I started a company. You said, That's nice, dear, and went back to talking about Meredith's kitchen. Eleanor's face did something complicated. I didn't realize. I know you didn't. Claire's voice was gentler than she felt. That's kind of the point. Robert cleared his throat. How much is the company worth? On paper? 80 million. Robert whistled. Then he said, Your sister's going to lose her mind. He was right. Meredith called at 4, and Claire didn't answer. She called again at 4:30 and again at 5. At 5:15, a text came through. Answer your phone. I know what you did. You told Mom and Dad, didn't you? You couldn't wait to rub my face in it. Claire typed back. I told them about my company. That's not about you, Mare. Everything is about me when you use it to humiliate me in front of our family. Claire didn't respond. She put her phone in her desk drawer and went back to work. At 6, she was packing up when the receptionist called from the lobby. Claire, there's a woman here to see you. She says she's your sister. She doesn't have an appointment. Claire's hand stilled on her bag. Send her up. She was waiting by the time the elevator opened. Meredith stood in the middle of the reception area, and for a second Claire didn't recognize her. The makeup was gone, or rather, it was smudged, streaked in faint gray lines under her eyes, like she'd been rubbing at them for hours. Her hair was down, not blown out, just falling in loose waves around her shoulders. She wasn't wearing the cream sweater. She was wearing an old college hoodie, the kind Claire hadn't seen on her since they were in their 20s. But it was her eyes that stopped Claire. They weren't angry. They were wide and wet and frightened, the way a child looks when she's lost in a grocery store and can't find her mother. Claire, Meredith said, and her voice cracked on the name. I need your help. Claire brought Meredith into her office and closed the door. She poured her a glass of water from the cooler and sat across from her, waiting. Meredith didn't drink the water. She held it in both hands, staring at the condensation on the plastic, and for a long moment she said nothing. Then, I need you to fire Dan. Claire blinked. What? Fire him. Terminate his employment. Whatever you call it. Meredith looked up, and the fear was still there, but underneath it something harder was surfacing. He used me, Claire. He dated me for 2 months and never told me he worked for my sister. He was probably gathering information the whole time. Reporting back to you. He wasn't reporting back to me. I didn't even know he existed until Sunday. Do you really expect me to believe that? Meredith's voice rose. He shows up at my family dinner, drops this bombshell about his paycheck, and suddenly you're the big CEO and I'm the idiot who didn't know? This was planned. You planned it. Claire took a breath. She'd been here before. The slow spiral of a Meredith argument, where logic was a foreign language and the only currency was volume, but something was different tonight. Meredith wasn't performing. She was unraveling. Myrrh, listen to me. Dan is a good employee. His numbers are the best in the region. I can't fire him because you're upset that he didn't disclose a personal connection. Personal connection? Meredith laughed, sharp and bitter. He's my boyfriend, Claire. Or he was. I don't even know anymore. Then that's between you and him, not between him and the company. Meredith stood up so fast the water sloshed over the rim of the cup and onto Claire's desk. You're choosing him over your own sister? I'm choosing not to make an employment decision based on a family fight. Claire stood too. If you want help with Bradley, with the divorce, with money, I'm here. But I'm not firing Dan. The words hung between them. Meredith's face went through a series of expressions. Surprise, hurt, fury, and then settled on something cold. Money? She said quiet. Who told you about money? Claire didn't answer. Bradley. Meredith's lip curled. Of course he called you. He's been calling everyone, hasn't he? Painting himself as the victim. Poor Bradley, trapped with the crazy wife. That's not— Get out. Meredith grabbed her purse. I don't need your help. I don't need your charity. And I don't need your pity. She was out the door before Claire could stop her. The elevator chimed, and then she was gone. Claire stood in her office for a long time, staring at the water stain on her desk. She'd misread the moment completely. She'd thought Meredith was there, vulnerable, asking for help. She'd thought the mask had fallen and the real person underneath was reaching out. But Meredith hadn't come for help. She'd come for a weapon, and when Claire refused to hand it over, she'd left angrier than she'd arrived. Jenna found her 10 minutes later, still standing by the desk. Everything okay? No. Claire sat down. My sister just left. She wanted me to fire Dan. Jenna's eyebrows went up. Did you? Of course not. Good. Jenna pulled up a chair. Claire, I need to say something, and I need you to hear me. Your sister is not just sad or embarrassed. She's actively working against you. The thing at the tech bridge mixer? That wasn't a mistake. That was her feeling out whether our competitors would pay for information. And if she's willing to do that in public, imagine what she'll do when she's cornered. She's my sister, Jenna. I know. And I'm not saying abandon her. I'm saying protect yourself. Protect the company. There are 40 people who work here, Claire. 40 people who count on this thing not blowing up because your family has issues. Claire nodded. She knew Jenna was right. She'd known it since the first text from Meredith on Sunday night. But knowing it and accepting it were two different things. Eleanor called on Wednesday morning, her voice careful and conciliatory. I talked to your sister. She's having a hard time. I think we should all get together. Dinner, maybe. Just the four of us. No boyfriends, no husbands. Family. Claire wanted to say no. She said yes. The dinner was on Thursday, at the same house, at the same table. Eleanor made lasagna. Robert opened a bottle of wine. Meredith showed up in the cream sweater again, hair blown out, makeup flawless, and for a moment Claire hoped, that the woman who'd shown up at her office had been a hallucination. She wasn't. The performance was back, but it was thinner now, like a coat of paint applied over rotting wood. Meredith was sweet to Claire, overly sweet, asking about the little company and how the startup life was treating her, and Claire could see her mother relaxing, could see her father exhaling, could see the family machine clicking back into its familiar rhythm. Claire let it happen. She ate the lasagna. She answered the questions. She didn't push. And then, as dessert was being served, Meredith turned to Eleanor and said, Mom, you know Claire's company hasn't actually made any money, right? It's all investor money. Venture capital. It could disappear tomorrow. She smiled, warm and concerned. I just worry about her. That's all. Claire set down her fork. We've been profitable for 18 months, Meredith. Profitability is a funny word in startups. Meredith waved a hand. I've read the articles. You know what they say. If you can't explain your business model in one sentence, it's not a real business. Eleanor looked uncertain. Robert looked at Claire. Claire stood up. I'm done. She left the lasagna and the wine and the carefully reconstructed piece on the table and walked out to her car. She was halfway home when her phone buzzed. A LinkedIn message from someone she didn't know, a VP at a competing firm. Hey Claire, heard you might be open to conversations. Your sister gave me your info. Said you're looking for an exit. Interested in grabbing coffee? Claire stared at the message. Her sister had given out her contact information, had told a competitor she was looking to sell, had been working this angle while sitting across from her at the dinner table, smiling over tiramisu. She called Bradley. He answered on the second ring. Claire, I need to see you, she said. Tomorrow. Everything you know about my sister. I want all of it. They met at a diner in Midtown, the kind with vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like regret. Bradley was already there in a suit without a tie, sleeves rolled to the elbows, looking like a man who'd been sleeping poorly for months. Thanks for meeting me. Claire slid into the booth across from him. I've been expecting this call since Sunday. He signaled the waitress. Coffee, coffee, black. Claire ordered the same. Then she leaned forward. Start from the beginning. The separation, the debt, everything. Bradley did. He talked for 40 minutes, and Claire listened. And the picture that emerged was not the one she'd expected. The marriage had been dying for 3 years. Not dramatically. No screaming fights, no slammed doors, just a slow, steady erosion. Meredith had stopped asking about his day. He'd stopped coming home on time. They'd slept in the same bed, but lived in different time zones. The affair was 6 months ago, Bradley said, and his voice was flat, the way people sound when they've rehearsed a confession. A paralegal at the firm. It was stupid. It was over in 3 weeks. But Meredith found out and... He paused. She didn't yell. She didn't cry. She sat at the kitchen table and said, "If you leave me, I will make sure you never see your kids again." And I believed her. So you stayed. I stayed. For 4 more months. And then I couldn't do it anymore. I told her I wanted a separation. I moved out. I froze the accounts because, Claire, she was spending. Not normal spending. Compulsive. Designer bags she never opened. Furniture for rooms we didn't have. Vacations she booked and canceled. $40,000 in 3 months. I couldn't stop it any other way. Claire thought about the cream sweaters and the gold earrings and the country club fundraisers. She thought about the kitchen renovation that was almost done. She thought about how Meredith had always made money look effortless, like it grew on the trees in their perfectly mulched front yard. "She's been contacting my competitors," Claire said, "telling them I want to sell, giving them my information." Bradley nodded slowly. "I'm not surprised. She's desperate. When Meredith gets desperate, she doesn't ask for help. She tries to create leverage. If she can convince your competitors you're weak, maybe one of them makes an offer. Maybe she gets a finder's fee. Maybe she gets a job." She's thinking, Claire. She's always thinking. About what? About survival. She has no income, no career. She's been out of the workforce for 12 years. Her credit is tanking. Her husband is leaving her. Her sister, who she's spent her whole life feeling superior to, just turned out to be more successful than she'll ever be. Bradley met her eyes. "She's not attacking you because she hates you. She's attacking you because you're the only thing in her life that still has value. And if she can't have it, she wants to control it." Claire drank her coffee. It was terrible. She drank it anyway. "Does she know you're telling me all this?" "She'd kill me if she knew." Bradley almost smiled. "But I'm tired, Claire. I'm tired of the lies. I'm tired of the performance. And I'm worried about her. About what she'll do." They talked for another 20 minutes. Bradley gave her the name of his divorce attorney, the name of the credit counseling service he'd tried to get Meredith to use, the name of the therapist the kids were seeing. Then Claire drove back to Alpharetta, her head full of a picture of her sister that she didn't know what to do with. Dan called her that afternoon. "Claire, I need to tell you something." His voice was low, urgent. "I was at Meredith's house last night. We were supposed to talk, try to figure things out, and I heard her on the phone. She was talking to someone at a company called Supply Sync. She was offering them inside information about Viridian's client contracts. She said she had access through you." "Did she?" "No, I don't think so. I think she was bluffing. But the guy on the other end, he was interested. He wanted to meet." Dan paused. "Claire, I don't think she knows what she's doing. I think she's in way over her head." Claire thanked him and hung up. She sat in her car in the parking lot of her office building and stared at the steering wheel. Her sister was trying to sell her company's secrets. Her sister was drowning and didn't know how to ask for a life preserver. Her sister was both the victim and the villain of her own story, and Claire didn't know which version to believe. The Chronicle profile went live at 6 the next morning. Claire saw it when she woke up. The headline, "From Sunday Dinner to Series B, How Claire Bennett Built a Company No One in Her Family Knew Existed." The article was good, fair, well reported, with quotes from Jenna and from an early investor, and from Claire herself, talking about the years of silence, the doubt, the moment she'd realized she was more afraid of success than of failure. It didn't mention Meredith. Not by name, but the subtext was there, and by 9 o'clock, the comment section was full of people who'd recognized the golden child sister from the Atlanta social circuit. Claire was reading the comments when her phone rang. The board chair, "Claire, we've seen the article. We need to convene an emergency meeting today. There are concerns about, how do I put this, the reputational risk associated with your family situation." Claire closed her eyes. "What time?" 2 o'clock. "Be there." The board meeting was at 2, in the 14th floor conference room with the floor-to-ceiling windows and the table that could seat 12 and usually seated 5. Claire walked in with Jenna at her side and found all 7 directors present, which was 3 more than usual. The chair, a venture capitalist named Patricia Huang, got straight to the point. "Claire, we're not here to question your leadership. The company's numbers speak for themselves. But this profile, and the attention it's generated, has raised some concerns." She tapped a tablet. "Your sister's name is trending on Atlanta social media. There are Reddit threads. A local gossip blog picked it up. One of our enterprise clients called this morning asking if there was any instability they should know about." Claire listened. She'd known this was coming. She'd spent the morning preparing. Financial projections, client retention data, a statement about the separation between her personal and professional life. But Patricia wasn't finished. "We need you to address this, publicly, cleanly. And we need to know that this woman, your sister, isn't going to become a recurring problem." "She won't," Claire said. "With respect, you don't know that." Patricia's tone was even, not unkind, but firm. "If she's contacting competitors monitors, if she's offering information. That's not a family issue, Claire. That's a security issue. The meeting lasted an hour. The board didn't demand her resignation. They didn't demand she fire anyone. They demanded a plan, a timeline, a commitment that the Meredith situation would be contained. Claire gave it to them. She didn't know how she'd keep it. Afterward, in the elevator, Jenna was quiet. When the doors closed, she said, "That could have gone worse. It could have gone better." "Yeah." Jenna looked at her. "Claire, I need you to hear something. I love you. You're my best friend. But if this starts affecting the company, really affecting it, I'm going to have to do something about it. Not because I want to, because I have a responsibility to the people who work here." Claire nodded. She couldn't argue with that. The rest of the day was a cascade. Eleanor called, crying, upset about the article, upset that the whole city was talking about their family. Robert called, quieter, just to say he was proud of her, but that your mother's having a hard time. Meredith called 3 times, each call angrier than the last, and by the third one she was screaming about humiliation, about betrayal, about how Claire had destroyed everything and ruined her life. Claire let her scream. She didn't hang up. She didn't argue. She held the phone at arm's length and waited for it to be over. Dan came to her office at 5. He looked exhausted. "I'm resigning," he said, "and Meredith and I are done. For good this time." Claire stood up. "Dan, you don't have to." "I do." He set a letter on her desk. "It's not because of you. It's because I can't be in the middle of this. Every time I look at her, I wonder if she ever really liked me or if I was just a prop. And every time I look at you, I wonder if you think I'm a spy. I can't do either one." He paused. "For what it's worth, I think she needs help. Real help. Not the kind you can buy with a credit card." He left. Claire sat with the resignation letter in front of her and didn't open it. By 7, she was alone in the office. The cleaning crew had come and gone. The lights were off except for her office. She sat in the dark and listened to the building hum and thought about the day. The board was watching. Jenna was at her limit. Her parents were hurt. Dan was gone. Meredith hated her. The company, the thing she'd built from nothing, the thing that was supposed to be hers, was suddenly fragile, threatened not by a competitor or a market shift, but by her own blood. She drove to her parents' house. She didn't know why. Maybe because it was the only place she'd ever felt like a child. And right now being a child seemed easier than being a CEO. The house was dark except for the kitchen light.
Eleanor was at the table, a glass of wine in front of her, not drinking it.
She looked up when Claire came in. "You should have called." "I know." Claire sat down across from her. "Mom, I need to ask you something." Eleanor waited. Meredith said something. "On the phone today. She said you never wanted me." Claire's voice was steady, but her hands were shaking under the table. "She said I was an accident, that you didn't want to have me." Eleanor's face closed. The wine glass sat between them, untouched, the red liquid still as stone. "Where did you hear that?" "Meredith, today. She screamed it at me." Claire leaned forward. "Is it true?" Eleanor looked at her. For a long time she said nothing. Then she reached across the table and covered Claire's hand with her own, and her hand was cold. "We need to talk," she said. "But not tonight. Not like this. Mom, tomorrow." Eleanor's voice was firm, the way it got when she'd made a decision. "Come over tomorrow after work. I'll tell you everything. But not tonight, Claire. Please, not tonight." Claire left. She drove home with the windows down, the August air thick and warm, and she thought about her mother's cold hand on hers, and the way the wine glass had sat there, full and untouched, like a confession that couldn't be spoken. She didn't know what was coming tomorrow, but she knew, with a certainty that settled in her chest like a stone, that nothing was going to be the same after it. Eleanor was waiting when Claire arrived the next evening. The kitchen table was set with 2 cups of tea, and the curtains were drawn, and Robert was gone. "I sent him to the hardware store," Eleanor said. "He'll be at least an hour." They sat down. Eleanor held her teacup in both hands and stared into it like she was reading leaves. "I was 23 when I had Meredith," she said finally. "Your father and I had been married a year. It was planned. We were ready. Everything was perfect." She paused. "You were 4 years later. I was 27. Your father had just been laid off. We were living in a 2-bedroom apartment in Marietta. Meredith was colicky and never slept, and I was depressed, Claire. The kind of depressed where you don't get out of bed. The kind where you look at your own child and feel nothing." Claire's throat tightened. She didn't speak. "When I found out I was pregnant with you, I sat on the bathroom floor and cried for an hour. Not because I didn't want you, because I couldn't imagine how I was going to do it. How I was going to be a mother to 2 children when I could barely be a mother to 1. Eleanor looked up, and her eyes were wet. "I never told anyone. Not your father. Not a doctor. I carried it. And then you were born, and you were this easy, quiet baby, and I thought, see, it's fine. Everything's fine. But it wasn't fine. It wasn't fine." Eleanor set down her tea. "I bonded with Meredith because she needed me. She was loud and demanding, and she took up all the space. And you were quiet. You didn't need me. Or I told myself you didn't. I told myself you were fine on your own. And then as you got older, it was easier to focus on Meredith Meredith because she was the one who demanded it. Easier to let you be the independent one, and I told myself that was love, letting you be strong. It wasn't love, Claire said. Her voice was quieter than she intended. I know, Eleanor's voice broke. Claire, I am so sorry. I have been sorry for 30 years. I just didn't know how to say it, they cried. Not dramatically, quietly, the way adults cry, with sleeves wiped across eyes and deep breaths and long pauses. When it was over, Claire felt lighter than she had in years. Not happy, just unburdened. She drove home with a plan forming in her head. Not a plan for revenge. A plan for ending the war. The next morning, she called Bradley. I want to make a deal, she said. You help Meredith get real financial counseling. Not the kind you push on her, the kind she chooses. You agree to a clean divorce, no public mudslinging, reasonable spousal support for 2 years while she gets on her feet. In exchange, I'll talk to her. I'll get her to stop contacting my competitors. I'll get her to stop the self-destruction. But I need you to give her something she can't get from credit cards. A real future. Bradley was quiet. Then, 2 years of support? That's more than I was planning to offer. She was out of the workforce for 12 years, Bradley. She can't go from zero to self-sufficient in 6 months. Give her 2 years. Give her a chance to rebuild. And in exchange, you get a divorce without a courtroom drama. Without your kids reading about their parents' marriage in the paper. I'll think about it. Don't think too long. She's getting worse by the day. She called Patricia Huang after that. She told the board chair she had a plan to address the family situation, a timeline, a communication strategy, a commitment that Meredith would no longer have any access to company information or personnel. Patricia was skeptical but agreed to give her 30 days. She found Jenna in the break room refilling her water bottle. Hey, Claire leaned against the counter. I owe you an apology. I let this get away from me. I should have told you about Meredith sooner. I should have taken it seriously when you warned me. Jenna studied her. What changed? My mom told me something last night about why our family is the way it is. And I realized I've been spending my whole life trying to earn a place at a table that was never going to have a seat for me. And in the meantime, I almost lost the table I built myself. Claire met her eyes. You and this company are my family, Jenna. I'm sorry I forgot that. Jenna's expression softened. Don't do it again. I won't. That afternoon, Claire called Meredith. It went to voicemail. She called again. Voicemail. She texted, Mir, I want to help. Not with Dan. Not with firing people. With Bradley. With the money. With whatever you need. Call me, please. 3 hours later, a text came back. One word, why? Claire typed, because you're my sister. And because I'm tired of fighting. No response. She didn't know it then, but while she was extending an olive branch, Meredith was on the phone with the Chronicle reporter who'd written the profile. Meredith had found her number. Through a friend of a friend. Through the Atlanta social circuit. Through the endless web of connections that Meredith had spent 15 years cultivating. And Meredith was offering her a story. Dan called on Saturday morning. He'd already cleaned out his desk, but he still had Meredith's number, and she'd called him the night before, drunk, talking a mile a minute about telling the truth and letting everyone know who Claire really is. She called the reporter, Dan said. The one from the Chronicle. She's going to tell her. Claire, she's going to tell her everything. The fight, the debt, Bradley's affair, your mom, all of it. Claire was sitting on her back porch, coffee in hand, watching a squirrel argue with a bird feeder. She set the coffee down very carefully. Everything? She said she's going to ruin you the way you ruined me. Dan's voice was grim. Claire, I'm sorry. I know I'm not exactly in a position to— You did the right thing calling me? Thank you. She hung up and sat very still for a minute. The squirrel won the argument with the bird feeder and started eating. Then she called the reporter. Her name was Sarah Lynn. She was 32, had written for the Chronicle for 4 years, and had been polite and professional during Claire's interview 2 weeks ago. Claire got her on the phone on the second ring. Sarah, it's Claire Bennett. I understand my sister has been in touch with you. A pause. I can't really comment on— I'm not asking you to comment. I'm asking you to hear me out. Before you run anything from Meredith, I want to tell you the full story. Not her version. Not my version. The facts. The separation, the debt, the favoritism, the years of silence. All of it. Claire paused. And I want to tell you why I'm calling you instead of trying to stop you. Why are you calling? Because if this story is going to come out, I'd rather it come out honestly. I'd rather people know that my family is messy and complicated and human, instead of some gossip column version where I'm the villain and she's the victim. She took a breath. Can we meet today? They met at a cafe in Decatur. Claire talked for 2 hours. She told Sarah about growing up in Meredith's shadow, about the Sunday dinners, about the night Meredith said her career was embarrassing, about the debt, the separation, the competitors, about her mother's confession. She didn't spare herself. She talked about her own silence, her own pride, the way she'd hidden her success because she was afraid no one would believe it. Sarah took notes. When Claire finished, she said, "This is a better story than the one your sister is offering. It's the true one. I believe you." Sarah closed her notebook. "I'm not going to run Meredith's version, but I am going to run a follow-up, with your permission." Claire gave it. The same day, Bradley filed for divorce. He'd taken Claire's deal, 2 years of spousal support, financial counseling, no public mudslinging, and he'd filed the paperwork quietly, through his attorney, with a request for mediation rather than litigation. Meredith found out on Monday. She called Claire screaming, but Claire didn't flinch. "He's doing what you should have done 4 months ago. Muir, he's giving you a way out that doesn't involve ruining anyone. You're all against me." Meredith shrieked. "Bradley, you, Dan, you've all been plotting against me. No one's plotting against you. We're all trying to keep you from drowning." The follow-up article ran on Wednesday. It was titled "The Other Side of the Sunday Dinner: A Sister, a Secret, and the Cost of Keeping Up Appearances." It was fair. It was honest. It didn't make Meredith look like a monster. It made her look like a woman who'd built her identity on a foundation of sand and was watching it sink. The comments were split. Some people called Claire brave. Some called her a traitor to her family. Some recognized Meredith from the country club and said they'd always known something was off. Meredith didn't call after the article. She didn't text. For 2 days, silence. And then, on Friday night, she showed up at her parents' house. Claire was there. She'd been coming over every evening since Eleanor's confession, sitting with her mother, talking, slowly rebuilding something that had been broken for 30 years. Meredith walked in and saw them sitting together at the kitchen table, 2 cups of tea, the curtains open, and something in her face cracked. "Of course," she said, her voice trembling. "Of course you two are bonding. You finally got what you wanted, didn't you, Claire? Mom's attention. You had to destroy my marriage, ruin my reputation, and turn our mother against me to get it." "Meredith," Eleanor started. "Don't." Meredith held up a hand. "Don't you dare. You've always done this. You've always favored her. Even when she was a mistake. Even when you didn't want her." The room went silent. Eleanor's face went white. Claire looked from her mother to her sister, and she saw it. The secret. The one Eleanor had confessed in this very kitchen. The one Claire had carried for a week, now out in the open. Wielded like a weapon by the woman who'd used it against Claire for years. "You told her," Claire said, quiet. "You told Meredith I was an accident." Eleanor didn't deny it. She looked at Claire, and her eyes were full of a grief so old it had calcified. "Yes," she said, "but not for the reason you think." The 3 of them stood in the kitchen like statues. Meredith by the door, chest heaving, the words still hanging in the air between them. Eleanor at the table, her hands gripping the edge like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Claire in the middle, turning to face her mother. "What does that mean?" Claire's voice was steady, but her heart was hammering. "Not for the reason I think?" Eleanor took a breath. She looked at Meredith, then at Claire, and something in her seemed to settle, the way a building settles after an earthquake, cracked but still standing. "I told Meredith when she was 16. She found my old journal, the one I kept when I was pregnant with you, Claire. She read it. She found the pages where I wrote about being scared, about being depressed, about not knowing if I could do it." Eleanor's voice was quiet but clear, and she came to me crying and said, "Mom, did you not want Claire?" "And I made a mistake." I told her the truth. "But I told her the wrong part." "What do you mean the wrong part?" Meredith's voice was smaller now, the fire going out of her. "I told her I'd been depressed, that you were unplanned, that it had been hard, but I didn't tell her the rest." Eleanor looked at Claire. "I didn't tell her that the day you were born I held you and I cried because I loved you so much it scared me. I didn't tell her that you were the easiest baby, the happiest child, and that every day with you was a gift I didn't think I deserved. I didn't tell her that the reason I let you be independent wasn't because I didn't care. It was because I was afraid if I held on too tight, I'd break you." Silence. The refrigerator hummed. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. "You never told me that," Meredith said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "I know." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "I was ashamed. I was ashamed of being depressed, of being a bad mother, of the journal. And when you found it, I let you believe the worst version. Because it was easier than explaining the complicated version." She looked at Claire. "I let both of you believe the worst version. And I'm so sorry." Claire felt it then. The thing she'd been carrying for 34 years. The weight she hadn't known was there. The quiet question that had lived in her chest since she was old enough to notice that her mother hugged Meredith longer and praised Meredith louder and remembered Meredith's allergies but forgot Claire's. It wasn't that she wasn't loved. It was that her mother had been too broken to love her properly and too ashamed to say so. She turned to Meredith. Her sister was leaning against the doorframe, and the performance, the 15-year performance, was gone. The cream sweater was gone. The gold earrings were gone. The blown-out hair and the perfect makeup and the golden child smile were gone. What was left was a 38-year-old woman who'd spent her whole life being the favorite and had just found out the favoritism was built on a lie. "Meredith," Claire said, "I need you to hear me. I have never wanted your life. I have never wanted your husband, your house, your country club, your perfect kitchen. I have never wanted to be you." Meredith looked up. Her eyes were red. "All I ever wanted," Claire said, "was for you to see me, not as the disappointment, not as the accident, not as the quiet one who doesn't matter, as me, as your sister, as someone who worked hard and built something and was proud of it." Her voice cracked. "That's all. I didn't need you to be less successful. I just needed you to look at me." Meredith opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, and then she started crying. Not the performative crying she did at dinner parties, the kind that got her attention and sympathy, real crying, the kind that comes from somewhere so deep it has its own weather system. She slid down the door frame until she was sitting on the floor, and she cried, and Claire stood there and watched her, and for the first time in her life, she didn't feel like the younger sister. She felt like the adult in the room. She walked over and sat down on the floor next to Meredith. She didn't hug her. She didn't say, "It's okay." She just sat there, shoulder to shoulder, while her sister fell apart. After a long time, Meredith spoke. Her voice was raw, muffled against her knees. "I don't know who I am without it." Without what? Without being the good one, the successful one, the one Mom loves best. Meredith looked up, her face streaked and swollen. "If I'm not that, what am I?" Claire thought about it. She thought about the years of silence, the hidden company, the Sunday dinners, the gravy. She thought about her own answer to that question, the one she'd found in a dark office, in a boardroom, in her mother's kitchen. "You're Ava and Ethan's mom," she said. "You're a woman who's really good at throwing a party and remembering everyone's birthday and making a house feel like a home. You're my sister, and you're someone who's been scared for a really long time, and now you don't have to be." Meredith stared at her. "I can help you," Claire said, "with the divorce, with the money, with figuring out what comes next. But you have to stop performing. You have to stop trying to win a game that doesn't exist anymore. And you have to let people see you, the real you, the scared one, the one who doesn't have it all together. What if they don't like her?" Meredith whispered. "Then they don't. But the people who matter will." They sat on the kitchen floor for another hour. Eleanor brought them water. Robert came home from the hardware store and took one look at the three of them and went quietly to the living room, where he turned on the golf tournament and pretended not to hear anything. When Meredith finally stood up, she didn't say yes. She didn't say no. She looked at Claire and she said, "I need to think about it." "Okay," Claire said. Meredith left. The screen door slapped shut behind her, and Claire stood in the kitchen and listened to her car start and pull out of the driveway, and she didn't know if her sister would come back. But for the first time in 34 years, she didn't feel like she had to chase her. 3 months later, the leaves were turning. Alpharetta looked like a postcard in October. Red and gold and burnt orange, the kind of autumn that made people from California move south, and then regret it in July. Claire pulled into her parents' driveway at 5:30 on a Sunday. The screen door was propped open, and she could smell pot roast from the car. Some things didn't change. She walked in with a bottle of wine and found Meredith already in the kitchen, wearing jeans and a faded college sweatshirt, helping Eleanor set the table. No cream sweater, no gold earrings, no blowout. Just Meredith, hair in a ponytail, arguing with their mother about whether the carrots needed more pepper. "Claire!" Meredith looked up and smiled. A real smile, not the performance. "You're late. Traffic on 400. Claire set the wine down and kissed Eleanor's cheek. "Hey, Mom." "Hey, sweetheart." Eleanor's smile was different now, too. Warmer, more present. She hugged Claire longer than she used to, and Claire let her. Robert was in the living room, but the golf tournament was off. He was reading a book, and when Claire came in, he looked up and said, "Hey, Bug, how was the week?" "Good. We closed the Charlotte account." Robert nodded like he knew what that meant. He did now. He'd asked a lot of things in the last 3 months. Dinner was at 7, the 4 of them. No boyfriends, no husbands, no performances. Meredith talked about her new job, part-time marketing consultant for a small real estate firm in Roswell. It wasn't glamorous. It didn't come with a country club membership, but it was hers, and she was good at it, and she talked about it the way she used to talk about the kitchen renovation, with pride, but without the edge. She talked about therapy, too. Once a week, a woman named Dr. Patel in Sandy Springs. "She says I have an identity disorder," Meredith said, spearing a carrot. "Not the clinical kind. The I don't know who I am when I'm not performing kind." "Progress," Claire said. "Slow progress." Meredith took a drink of water. But progress. The divorce was final, 2 months ago. Mediation, no courtroom, no headlines. Bradley had kept the condo. Meredith had kept the house. For now. Until she decided whether she wanted to stay in Alpharetta or start over somewhere smaller. The kids were with her during the week, with Bradley on weekends, and for the first time in their marriage, they were civil to each other. Not friends. Civil Dan was gone. He'd taken a job in Dallas. A promotion. A fresh start. He'd texted Claire once after he moved. "Hope everything's okay." She'd texted back, "It is. Good luck." That was it. Viridian Labs was thriving. The board had given Claire a vote of confidence at the last meeting. The Charlotte account was the biggest client they'd ever signed. Jenna had finally stopped giving her the "I told you so" look, though she still brought it up at happy hour. The Chronicle follow-up had run its course. People stopped commenting. The Reddit threads died. The enterprise client who'd called with concerns had signed a 3-year renewal. Life moved on the way it does. Halfway through dinner, Robert looked up from his plate and said, "Claire, how's the company doing?" You mentioned something about a new product line, and before Claire could answer, Meredith said, "She's launching a supply chain AI tool. It's going to change the industry. She's been working on it for 6 months." She said it like it was the most natural thing in the world, like she'd been talking about Claire's work for years instead of weeks. Claire looked at her. Meredith caught her eye and shrugged, a small, self-deprecating smile. "I asked her about it last week." "Sue me." The table was quiet for a beat. Then Eleanor said, "That sounds wonderful, Claire. I'd love to hear more." And Claire told them. She told told them about the product, about the team, about the way Jenna's algorithm could predict supply chain disruptions 3 weeks before they happened. She told them about the Charlotte account and the Series C they were starting to plan for next year. She told them, and they listened, really listened, and no one laughed, and no one changed the subject, and no one said, "That's cute, but when are you going to get a real job?" After dinner, Claire and Meredith stood in the kitchen, washing dishes the way they'd done when they were kids. Claire washed, Meredith dried. Their mother had gone into the living room to watch a movie with Robert, and the kitchen was quiet except for the running water and the clink of plates. "Hey," Meredith said, drying a glass. "I never said thank you. For what? For not giving up on me when I was being awful." Meredith didn't look up. "I was awful, wasn't I?" "Yeah," Claire said. "You were." Meredith almost smiled. "I'm working on it. I know." They finished the dishes in silence. Meredith put the last glass in the cabinet and turned to Claire. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Did you mean it, what you said that night? About not wanting my life?" Claire dried her hands on a towel and looked at her sister, really looked at her, at the faint lines around her eyes, the chipped nail polish, the ponytail that was coming loose. "The woman underneath the performance. I meant it," she said. "Your life was never what I wanted. I just wanted to be in the same room as you and not feel like I was invisible." Meredith nodded. She picked up her purse from the counter. "I'll see you next Sunday?" "Next Sunday." Meredith walked to the door. Then she stopped, turned and said, "Claire, yeah? I'm proud of you." She said it like it cost her something, like it was the hardest sentence she'd ever spoken. "I should have said it a long time ago." Claire felt something tighten in her chest. She nodded, because if she opened her mouth she might cry, and she'd done enough crying in this kitchen to last a lifetime. Meredith smiled, the real one, and walked out. The screen door slapped shut behind her. Claire stood in the quiet kitchen and listened to her sister's car pull out of the driveway. The pot roast smell was fading. The dishes were done. The table was set for next Sunday, same as always. Some things didn't change, but some things did.